Check out the latest highlights from the Nourishing You podcast. That's such a great segue into the nitty-gritty of how stress impacts the body. So can you talk to us a little bit more about the signs and symptoms of actual stress? In other words, how does somebody know they're under chronic stress and if it's taking a toll on their body?
So pathologic stress, which is probably a way to look at it, that it's created a problem, because I think if you really think about animals, even animals are always under chronic stress, right? The squirrel in my backyard, that guy's up and down the tree and he's finding his nut and he's got to find his house. So I think almost all living things are probably under a little bit of chronic stress. What the key is when the stress becomes to a point that you can't function in your natural life. So one of the big things you're going to see is weight gain around the middle. And people talk about that with cortisol. Now, or chronic cortisol, where does that come from? So when you eat, you elevate your blood glucose and your muscle has receptors for insulin on it. So what you want to be able to do is elevate your glucose, stick it in the insulin receptor, put it into the muscle, and then the muscle will grow. Your body won't do that if, like I said before, it's in the middle of running from the tiger. So if you find that you're going to the gym and you're lifting and running and doing all these things, but yet you feel like your muscle mass in your body isn't where it needs to be, and you're carrying a little bit of that kind of full weight around the middle, then that's where you know that there's maybe some cortisol issues if you feel like you're trying to eat clean. If you're eating donuts 3 times a day, totally different story. But if you feel like you're trying to do everything right, you're going to the gym and you can't break that, you may want to back off on your system, because the stressors from life and the stressors from family and then the stressors to get to the gym can be an issue. Number 2, you're going to find dysfunctional sleep. You will fall asleep at night. You won't be able to stay asleep. Now, why does that happen? Your body has something called sleep pressure. So, as the day goes on, you will develop, it's almost like, remember Light Bright when we were little, we used to play that game of peg.
Yeah.
So I want you to think that you'll wake up with norepinephrine, a lot of white light bright pegs in your brain. Well, as the day goes by, the norepinephrine comes on down and the adenosine comes up. The white pegs come down and the yellow pegs go in. That creates in your brain a sleep pressure. So by the time the evening comes, that your circadian rhythms will see the dark outside, which, by the way, please don't be taking 5-10 milligrams of melatonin. I have people that call that melatonin. Just go outside for 10 minutes in the dark and your circadian rhythm will come down again. Then your adenosine is elevated. So you got enough of those other light bright pegs, and your eyes won't be able to stay open. The sleep pressure will kick in. Now this is optimal state of being, right? Then what happens is you get into sleep. When the system is not overly stressed and the gut microbiota or the bacteria are balanced where they need to be, you will not be making too much fight or flight epinephrine. You will start making GABA. So GABA will kick into your brain and you will move into your deep sleep. In your deep sleep, all your memories get solidified into the cortex so you can think the next day. And then you go into REM sleep, like I said, and then you deal with all your emotions. If your system is overly stressed and the gut's out of whack, that sleep pressure will kick in, so you will fall asleep, but you won't be able to stay asleep. Now, this doesn't count for menopausal women. Lack of estrogen and progesterone is a whole other animal. This is somebody having normal periods. So if the mechanism is where it needs to be, the system will stay asleep. Well, if you are, number one, that sleep pressure isn't kicking in and you're wide awake at night, your brain is spinning, problem number one. Usually, though, that person is going to be fatigued in the afternoon, fall a little sleepy like 8, 9, 10 o'clock, then they get into bed and their eyes are open. or they're going to fall asleep and then they're up from 1 to 3 and they just can't fall asleep again. Then they finally, by 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, will fall asleep again, only to have that alarm go off. And now they feel like they're tired all day. They can't think, their word recall becomes a problem. They're not motivated. Their system doesn't feel refreshed again. So dysfunctional sleep is a big sign of cortisol problems. And memory that's going to go along with that the next day also. The other thing that's going to happen that you're going to feel pretty significantly off with when stress is there is your ability to focus during the day is going to be a problem, and you'll be a lot more short-tempered. Mm-hmm. So if you put all of those together, it basically says your body is ready to spring anything that jumps on it. Panic attacks can get a little bit worse. Blood pressure can vary. And when you're looking at lab values, one of the things that you'll see is when you do a fasting blood sugar, your fasting blood sugar will be elevated. So optimal fasting blood sugar should be about 70 to 85. But you'll start to see, not that you're pre-diabetic. So the lab numbers will show that your pre-diabetic number is fine, but yet that fasting blood sugar starts to bump up to 90, 95. It shows that the gut's not relaxed, you're not digesting well, and your system can't metabolize well. And what you might also see along with this is bowel movement changes. Sometimes a little more diarrhea, sometimes a little more constipation, but your system will feel off.
If you enjoyed this short episode, check out our full library on our NAMP YouTube channel, where you can catch up or learn more. Keep in mind that the information on the NAMP podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or legal advice. The NAMP is not liable or responsible for any harm, damage, or illness arising from the use of the information contained herein. By listening to the information on this podcast, you agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the NAMP and all agents. Copyright NAMP, all rights reserved.